Don't forget to send me the PPT, okay?
पीपीटी भेजनी है क्या?
हाँ हाँ,
मैं भी भेज दूँ।
सेशन के बाद भेज देना।
अच्छा, ठीक।
So, dear learners, we have with us Dr. Shruti Datta, and I am pleasure to inform you that she was my colleague during the PhD time, and she is identified as one of the hardworking PhD student as she has worked in a very difficult area of research, that is glaciology. And working in a glacier is itself is a very hard work, as you know, and doing PhD in that field, that is entirely field work, it was very difficult task for a PhD work. And after PhD, she has been teaching in the this Amity University for last 10 years, and in the Department of Faculty of Science, Engineering and Technology, and in Amity University at Manesar, Gurgaon. So we welcome you, Dr. Shruti, and she has a lot of experience in different fields of earth sciences, stratigraphy of India, remote sensing and GIS. Is she has a very high command on remote sensing and GIS. Then geoinformatics, urban ecosystems, earth system sciences, and we welcome you, ma'am, and we look forward for your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Rita, for your beautiful and kind words. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shruti Datta, and I'm here to give you a short overview about land as a resource, how land is as a resource important to us. What is the present scenario of land degradation? What are its different aspects, and how we can go for a sustainable management? So, my topic is land degradation and sustainable management. This is a brief outline. So, we will be discussing about land and its land use classification. What are the different characteristics? How land degradation has led us, and how unsustainable land use practices have uh, brought us to a state where sustainable land management is now inevitable, and land use planning and evaluations, how they are very important uh, keys for this land sustainable land management. Then we'll be having a glimpse of how integrated land management is there, and what are its different constraints. What is the role of science and technology in integrated land management? What are the constraints, and how land use pattern is practiced in India? So before we start with our session, there are a certain few basic terminologies which we will be dealing with now. So the first one is land, and we all know what land is, but as specifically mentioned by United Nations, it is a delineable area of the Earth's terrestrial surface, which will encompass all attributes of the biosphere, which is below or above the surface. So that means all the near surface climate, the soil, the topography, the terrain, the surface hydrology, and it will include all the rivers, all the lakes, marshes, swamps, then all the sedimentary layers which are near the surface, the groundwater reserve, the plant and animal population, the human settlement, and every physical result of whatever has happened and which is happening at present. So all the activities, present and past human activities, is included in the land. So when we go for land use planning, we say that the land in how many different ways the land is being used. So what are the potential? What is the potential of land, and what can how it can be used alternatively for an optimal use? So if there has to be any other way out, or what is the present potential and how it can be improved, all this will will be included into your use planning. So the basic purpose of land use planning is to include different uses of land, and thereafter we can give support to the decision makers and land users, so as to how they can put and select these kind of lands that will be the best suitable for the population. And also in the process, it has to be ensured that the natural resources and the ecosystem services for us as well as for our coming generation is safeguarded. Then the third term which we would want to understand is landscape, which is an area of land which contains a mosaic of ecosystems, including human dominated ecosystems as well. So cultural landscape is usually used when landscape is containing significant human populations. And land resource planning, which is land evaluation, and how do we look into a land, what are its different land use planning, and the biophysical, socio-economical, and negotiatory domains are also addressed. So why land is important? Land is important because it is intricately related to different aspects of human life. So it serves as a storage for water, it serves as a storage for nutrients. Uh, it is important because it gives food, wood, minerals, then plants and animals cannot survive without land. There you have watershed, we have reservoir of water. Also, whatever waste is being generated in any, be it solid waste or any kind of waste which is generated by the modern society. When I say modern society, that means it also because of the different developmental activities which we have enhanced the quantity of waste which we have increased, that goes into the land, and land very quietly acts as a dustbin for it. And also all the different buildings, all the industries, whatever is being done is uh, there because of the land. So all the surface utilization of all the developed and vacant land at any specific point is your land use. So, land use is the human activities which are, land use defines the human activities which are directly related to land, and how the resources are used and how they impact them. So, therefore, uh, um we have to understand that the land resources, how in the last few decades there are different land practices based on different land uses that have led to the degradation of the land. So because land is a resource of multiple users, therefore since different things are being used on the land, so therefore the valuation of land, or if you can say the evaluation, or there is a if we go for a comprehensive valuation, it becomes very complex. So we can evaluate land on different basis. We can evaluate it through on the value of the land. So what is the biological productivity, what are the different grades of biological productivity, that can be one of the aspect. Then there can be what is the value of wildlife there, what is the aesthetic value, and sometimes there are certain values which certain levels which cannot be evaluated just on the basis of economic aspect. So land on which commercial or subsistence agriculture is there, that has one important value. The one which is not available for agriculture but is left for construction has different kind of value. So based on it, we go for different types of land use classification. And is it visible, Dr. Rita? Because my screen somehow is blinking today. I don't know why.
It's visible, but
Sorry?
It's visible.
Okay. So based on different kinds of uses, and also depending upon what the
Shruti,
yes, Rita.
light is blinking.
Yeah, exactly. For me also, it's blinking. I don't know why.
आप restart.
Maybe I'll just stop sharing it and then share it again. Now it should be okay.
Yes, Parul, tell us.
Is it okay?
Abhi, now it is okay. Now it is okay.
Yeah, actually,
Tell me.
if you can just give me a while, I'll just stop sharing it, maybe come back again.
Yeah. It would be good.
Yeah. Is it visible?
No. What you can do, Shruti, आप just Windows को पूरा close करो, then re-enter again.
Okay, I'll do that.
Hello. नहीं, श्रुति, what you have to do, आप log out करो, then you log in again. आप पूरा आपको Windows को close करो, और फिर you open पूरा close करो, पूरा.
Shall I put it in for a while? Because it is blinking again. I really don't know why it is happening.
आपकी which computer is yours? आपका कौन सा computer है? I mean, HP. आप restart कर सकता है, restart के option तो है.
Actually, जब share हो रहा है ना, तो ही blink कर रहा है, otherwise नहीं blink कर रहा.
Share होने में blink करें. Then आप कौन से way में Windows share your entire screen share कर दे?
मैं विंडो शेयर कर रही हूँ. मैं स्क्रीन शेयर करूँ?
Your entire screen share करके देखो. अभी तो फिर stabilize हो गया. क्योंकि हम रिकॉर्डिंग रखते हैं ना YouTube में. फिर बाकी लर्नर्स बाद में पर देखते हैं इसमें.
अभी तो मेरे ख्याल से ठीक है शायद ये.
अभी तो ठीक तो है. You can, yeah, you can.
And please continue.
हाँ, please.
Okay, thank you. So these are the different categories which has been devised. So basically, the uses at a particular geographical level, at a particular regional level, or a particular country, it has again started, will decide as to Rita, I think there's again the same problem.
एक बार वो entire screen करके try करो.
अच्छा, एक बार मैं करती हूँ.
that is the solution. Whole screen आप share करो. When I look into Google, it's also saying hide. Please click into the hide. That's okay. You are mute. You are mute. Mute. Unmuted. It is okay. Okay.
Yeah. Is it better now?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So based on the utilization and how the land has to be utilized, for various purpose, these are the different categories into which the land has been classified for the land use purpose. So there are few broad categories. Like the first one is the forest. So all the areas which are classified as forests they are under any legal enactment, or which are administered as forests, whether they are state owned or private. Then the next category is your land which is not available for cultivation. So two types of lands are included into this category. The one which is put to non-agricultural uses, for example, all the lands which are occupied by buildings or railways, rivers, canals, all these are into the category of non-agricultural land, and also the barren and uncultivable land. So the land which cannot be brought under any kind of cultivation, for example, the deserts or the mountains, they all are classified as land which is not available for cultivation. Then the third category is your other uncultivable land, which includes the land which is under permanent pastures or grazing lands, or the land which is under miscellaneous tree crop, and also the cultivable wasteland, which means the land which is available for cultivation, but which has been taken up or just not taken up once for harvesting, but it has not been harvested over the last 5 years more than in a sequence. Then the next category is fallow land, which includes the current fallow, which means the cropped area which is kept under fallow land for this current year, and other fallow other than the current fallow, which was taken up for the cultivation, but they are temporarily out of cultivation, and the period for being out of cultivation is less than 1 year, but not more than 5 years. And then the last category is the net sown area. So the area which is sown with crops and orchards, counting area sown more than once in the same year only. So when we talk about land use, there are two hierarchy. One is the major land use type, and the second one is the land utilization type. So when we say major land use types, it means what is the type, how the land is being used, whether it is being used for agriculture or whether it is being used for uh, settlement or for any, whether it is an agricultural land or whether it is a forested land. Whereas when we talk about the land utilization type, it means that it has a greater degree of details. So it consists of some technical specification as per the physical, social and economic setting. So land utilization types are of two types, multiple and compound. If the same type of land is being used for one purpose, then for example, if it is being used for timber, so if only one type is being used, that is your multiple land utilization, and the other one is your compound land utilization. So then we go for the land characteristics and the land quality types. So what do we mean by land characteristics and land quality? So a land characteristic is an attribute which can be measured, which can be estimated. For example, if you have a slope or you have an angle, a slope angle, or any texture of the soil, what is the water capacity, all this will come into the land characteristics. But when we talk about land quality, that means it is not necessarily restricted in its. Oh,
sorry ma'am, but
the presentation is not visible. Okay, I'll
yes,
maybe
it's okay ma'am.
share some. I'll do it. Can you see the presentation now?
Yes.
Full screen.
Is it full screen now?
Now, what you have to do, पहले आज just full screen करके रखो. When you choose that window, you choose that full screen one.
I'll do it again. अभी ठीक है?
Yes ma'am.
Again, it has started to blink.
Sorry ma'am, but the screen are again disappear.
It should come now.
Yes ma'am. Now it's come.
Okay. So in the present scenario, because of the excessive population, the excessive destruction of land resources, pollution and over-exploitation, and also why this economic pressure is there, because of high population, we are compelled to over-exploit the land. The land will not is a finite resource, so the excessive of land we cannot generate. So if the population is increasing, that means it will have an impact on the land. So the land is going to be overexploited, the pollution is going to be there, and therefore the resource is destructed. So because of which the land is undergoing severe degradation. So when we say land degradation, we mean that the value of the physical environment as well as the biological environment is affected and it is impacted by a combination of human-induced processes which are acting upon the land. So any change or any disturbance to the land which is undesirable is your land degradation. So a loss of actual or potential production of biomass from a land, or reduction of its capacity to regulate the environment because of some natural way or anthropogenic factors, is your land degradation. So there can be two aspects to it. One is that already there is an overexploitation. The other thing is economic pressure, because the government also sometimes encourages the industrial growth, and sometimes there may be a pricing structure. There can be subsidies on certain types of lands, or if there is a tax structure or a trade policy. All these have a cumulative effect on extensive pressure on the land, which will ultimately lead to its destruction, and that leads to unsustainable land use practices. So when the carrying capacity is reduced, sometimes maybe because of extreme weather conditions, if there's a drought kind of thing, so if the carrying capacity is reduced, or if the land is subjected to extensive overgrazing, or there are natural reasons like erosion, and because of erosion, when the topsoil is being removed, because of some climatic factors, the soil is not is of such type that it will promote degradation. Or if the topography is such that, for example, if there is a mountainous area or hilly area, so if the topography of the area is such that it may accelerate the land degradation. Also, if the marginal land is being used, so then also it leads to land degradation. So different kind of factors are responsible. Sometimes excessive cultivation or use of nitrogenous fertilizers, or also various techniques, if they are there for agricultural production, if they are in much use, that may lead to degradation of land. So we all know that the present land is there, and it is undergoing severe degradation. So recently ISRO has published a document. There is an atlas which is named as Desertification and Land Degradation Atlas. So it shows that the land degradation and desertification has enhanced in certain areas in years. So from 2018 to 19, the entire there has been an entire mapping of the degraded land, and also it has been compared with the last 15 years data from 2003 to 2005, and then 2018 to 19. So what the change has been there, it has been documented in that atlas. So it has been estimated that the total geographical area, which is 328.72 million hectares, so about 97.85 million hectares, which is approximately 30% of India's total geographical areas, has undergone land degradation. And in 2003 to 2005, the figure was about 94.53 million hectares, which is about 28.76 area of the India. So we can see that there has been an increase in the extent of land degradation. Then when we look into the desertification, we see that in 2018 to 19, 83.69 million hectares underwent desertification, and in 2003, between 2003 to 2005, it was 81.48 million hectares, and 11 and 13 it was 82.64 million hectares. So the desertification has also increased over the past 15 years. So this change detection has been done using the satellite images, and when we go for the state-wise data, we see that about 23.79 of the area of the total geographical area of the country. So the states like Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Ladakh, Jharkhand, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh and Telangana have contributed to about 23.79% of the area which is undergoing desertification. So between 2011 to 13 and 2018 to 19, an increase in the level of desertification in 28 states has been reported, and that's what the atlas is showing. So when we talk about the human induced degradation, what can be the possible causes? So the first one is your increase in population, obviously. So an increase in population which will lead to less suitable land cropping, because the area which is less suitable for cropping will be also included for agriculture. Then overgrazing. The increase in population leads to an increased demand for wood, fuel for fuel and timber. Then because of which the fallow land or which was there is now also included under cultivation, or sometimes because of the excessive pressure on land is finite. So the steeping slopes which are there, which were not very good for cultivation, they are also to be included into the for cultivation. So then there is a process which is there's a event which is called as nutrient mining. So instead of replacing the nutrients are being removed because of excessive pressure on the land. So these are the repercussions of because of increase in populations. And also then certain national policies, if they encourage the industrialization, they are also because of them also the degradation might be affected. So the human induced degradation can be of can lead to two type of things. The first one is the on-site effect, and the second one is the off-site effect. So on-site effect means something which is happening at that place only. For example, if there is a nutrient loss or something. And the second thing is off-site. Suppose the land is being degraded, so at some place the siltation or if anything is happening, that is your off-site effect. So on-site, if the land is being eroded, the topsoil is being removed, there is a depletion of nutrients, there can be chemical changes in soil, as I just said, nutrient depletion, or maybe acidification, or there can be an enhanced salinity. Also, there can be physical changes in the soil. For example, there can be compaction, there can be waterlogging, there can be crusting of the soil, or there can be surface sealing. So all this are the effects of human induced degradation. So the idea is to reduce the degradation and go for a management. Obviously, for all these things, a land management has to be done. So since the land is there for agriculture and for everything we need, so a land management has to be done, and the land management has to be done in such a way that all the requirement of the present is being fulfilled, as well as it is not hampering the future generations also. So when we talk about the sustainable land management, we seek to harmonize the complementary goals of how the environmental, economical and social opportunities are being provided for the benefit of we all who are living in the present, and also for the future generations. So and while doing all this, the quality of the land, the quality of the soil, water, the quality of all the resource has to be maintained and also enhanced. So the sustainable land management is the use of land to meet changing human needs, and which will include your agriculture, forestry or conservation, and also ensure long-term socio-economic and ecological functions of the land. So as defined by United Nations, it is the use of land resources, including soils, water, animal and plant, for the production of goods, to meet changing human needs while simultaneously ensuring the long-term productive potential of these resources and the maintenance of their environmental functions. So in Agenda 21 also of Sustainable Development, it is a very important and crucial building block for sustainable agricultural development. And it combines technologies, policies, and activities. So the technology has to be conveyed at the policymaker level, and then the activities have to be planned in such a way that it can integrate the socio-economic principle with environmental concerns also. And with this, it can simultaneously maintain and enhance production and reduce the level of production risk and enhance soil capacity to buffer against degradation processes. Also, to protect the potential of natural resources and prevent degradation of soil and water quality. Then the viability aspect has to be looked into, that it is economically viable also, and it is socially acceptable also. So we cannot ignore the society, we have, and community. So the community and the society also has to be made aware of it, and it should be acceptable by them also. So they have to be convinced that the benefits which are being attempted, or the objective of the improved land management has a better impact on them, so that acceptability or the equity aspect has to be also there. So these criteria, they are called as the pillars of sustainable land management, and they are the basic principles. So these foundations on which the land management is being developed. And if any evaluation of has to be done for the sustainability, there are few objectives which has to be considered. So productivity, stability or resilience, protection, viability, and acceptability. All these different pillars which we just discussed has to be looked into. So these definitions and these pillars have been evaluated and in several countries, and for sustainability, and they were found to be feasible. So a knowledge-based procedure that can help to integrate land, water, biodiversity, and environmental management to meet all the fiber and food demands, and also to sustain ecosystem services and livelihood is included in sustainable land development. So all the forested areas or potentially commercial or non-commercial forest reserves, the sustenance of all the productive forest areas has to be seen. The integrity of watershed for water supply has to be looked on. The hydropower generation needs has to be looked on, and also preserving and enhancing the productive capabilities of the land. So it will also include actions how to stop and reverse the degradation, or at least to mitigate the adverse effect of the earlier misuse. So here we kind of summarize what can be the possible causes of degradation. One can be because of the physical and chemical processes, which is resulting from the interaction between agricultural and industrial technologies and land resource base. So whatever, if there is a chemical process, or if there is a physical process because arising because of industries, if there is a technological gap, so it can be because of that. Then the other one can be because of at the wider level, at the macro level. For example, if we are having global warming, or if we are having volcanic eruptions. And then the third one can be degradation with roots of behavioral nature. So for example, if there is an improper private incentive, which is ultimately linked with market failure, or from lack of knowledge or technologies, then these can be the possible ways of land resources. Now, how the land resource has to be used, how to go for any decision, or how to make policy. So there can be different parameters for it. One is the socio-economic parameter, where we have to consider what is the social setup of the society is, what is the economic strata. Then if there are different developmental activities going on, and also what are the environmental parameters, what is this, how the soil is there, whether the land is suitable for cultivation or agriculture or not, whether the land is suitable for sustaining built up area or not. Then so a blend of all these three parameters, the socio-economic, the developmental, and the environmental parameters, all the three parameters has to be looked into. And we also have to look into certain elements when we go for the land use planning. So one of the very important thing is your land evaluation and land use planning. And then with the help of land evaluation and land use planning, we can ultimately arrive at the integrated land management. So the first thing we would want to go into is the land evaluation. So as the term is there, evaluation means we are trying to look into how the land is and what can be the possible way. So the first thing is what is the problem. So why all this we are going to look into the land evaluation. So because of the land use which has been used inappropriately over the past years. So the natural resources have been exploited, the land resources has undergone a loss. So different social problems and certain different social issues like poverty, etc., is there. So to overcome this problem, the rational use of land, that is the rational land use planning, and the appropriate and sustainable use of natural and human resources. So the land evaluation can be a very important key aspect for land use planning, whether it is for certain individual user, for example, a farmer, or maybe at the village level or at the society level, which is represented by the government. So the land, when we go for the land evaluation, we have to first ascertain why it is required. So since we all know that there are different types of land, and it has variation at physical and geographic level. So for different type of land, different type of uses are there. So in different physical strata or economic strata, different types of areas are there, and different types of lands are there. So the variation in some part is systematic, and the variation when it is systematic, for example, if the physical or political economic are similar, or if it is variable, so it can be mapped and the total area can be divided into different regions. So if certain parameters are common and certain parameters are different, so based on it, whatever the requirement is, the area can be mapped and it can be divided into different regions. Now if some of the area, if it has a certain use, and if it has a certain level of the land has a quality, so the behavior of the land when it is subjected to a given use given use can be predicted with some degree of certainty. So depending upon the quality of the data on the land resource, and then we go for the land suitability for various actual and proposed land uses. So because of which if the land suitability is arrived at and it can be mapped, so decision makers, for example land users or planners, they can be made aware of it. So land use planning and land evaluation is an important tool to guide decisions for to have sustainable uses of resources, and also to understand what the natural environment is and the type of land use which is envisaged. And assessment of when we go for the assessment of land performance for a specific purpose, it is done through various steps. For example, we have to have a certain number of basic surveys. We have to understand how the climate of that area is, how the soil is, how the vegetation is, how the topography is. So different basic surveys has to be undergone. Okay, so when we go for land evaluation, we see what is the current land use, what are the present practices going on, and if these present practices, whether they can continue, or what will happen if they are continued or and unchanged, or if it has certain potential and if it can undergo any improvement. So both the aspects has to be seen, whether the present practices have to continue or if it has to be changed. Is there any improvement in the required, or any other physical uses or any social economical relevance which is related to that particular land, or if any sustained production or any will lead to any adverse effect, or any recurrent practices have to be employed. Another important aspect is the landscape resource planning, which encompasses land evaluation and land use planning. So it is the systematic assessment of land potential and alternatives for optimal land use and improved economic and social conditions through participatory processes, which are multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder, and scale dependent. So based on it, the aspect of integrated land management can be arrived at, where when we say integrated land management, it means it is integration of different branches. So all the stakeholders which are from social or economical or environmental background, all they have to be integrated into it. And then what is the best possible land use options that has to be developed. So it is an interdisciplinary approach which visualizes land with different perspectives, and what is the best combination of land management option for that particular landscape has to be identified through the integrated land management. So it is scale dependent, and multiple stakeholders and sectors are there. The important principle is that people and participatory approaches should be at the center of the process, and governance and enabling policies and institutions should should support the achievement of the land use plans. So policies and institutional supports are crucial at all scales, so that the national and subnational goals, economic, social, and environmental goals, are achieved, and the stakeholders, whether they are public or private sector, they have to there is a balance between all the different stakeholders also. So this is one of the figure which is being there. So if you can see, it gives a way how to integrated landscape management has to be done. Now, what is the role of science and technology in integrated land management? A very important role, because all the solutions to whatever complex or interacting issues of land management are there. They require contribution from not only physical, biological, but I think vast and a wide different branches also. And a holistic approach is required basically. So one of the very important aspect nowadays is from the remote sensing techniques, which is through different satellite images. So if we go for the land use studies and land use planning through remote sensing methods, there are important, they are being important because first they have a very they can go for a very synoptic coverage. So a large part of the area can be covered in less time as compared to the physical surveys which are being done. And also they can give a insight into how the different land use is taking place. They can also give a description about how the change is taking place. So for example, if we can see it here, this is one of the land use land cover map of the city of Faridabad. So we can also understand now there can be a generation of map, but here this is a very small map. What I would want you to understand is that this is the map from 1992 and this is a map from 2016. Now there are different index here. So this is the water body, and then you have through green you have the natural vegetation, we have the settlement. So one aspect of looking into the change detection is how much the area has increased or decreased. For example, if we go for settlement, certainly we can see that the settlement has increased. Also, from the quantitative point of view and also from the qualitative point of view. For example, if we have to understand what is the pattern of increase of growth of settlement. So maybe we can also understand that is there a focal point around which the area is increasing, like the population is increasing or the built-up area is increasing, or what is the pattern? Is it growing in a certain different area of, suppose, northwestern part of the city? So maybe we can relate that maybe there is a industry or something because of which. So the city planning has to be made in such a way that the settlement or everything has to be equitable. So through this method, we can also understand that what is the pattern, what is the change, and also if there is a certain inclination or there is a certain shift towards the built-up area in a particular certain direction. Now, there can be certain constraints to integrated land management. The first one is there is a limited access to appropriate information and technology. However, in the present scenario, we have access to certain data or at certain different portals, but still dissemination of the information and technology is still a constraint. Then there is a weakness in the institutional infrastructure. Unsustainable land use practices are not very much in use also. It's going on at different places. There still we are practicing unsustainable land use practices. And also, what is the approach towards land use? What is our goal? There is conflict at different level, maybe at society or government level, or so there are certain conflicts between the land use goals. So if we go for the land use pattern in India, there are certain, as of, if we can see, if you can look into this figure, we'll come back to the previous slides. So this is a land use map, which is for 1960-61 and how it has changed in 2014 and 15. And this is a land use map for the year 1988 and 89. However, the mapping units were different, so I have kept it in a different way. So if you can see it here, the amount of forest cover which is there there is a change, and also the area under non-agricultural uses, it has certainly reduced a little bit. So this is the land use pattern. So the net sown area, which is the cropped area, is there, and about 6% of the total reporting area, which is about 141.5 million hectares. So world's average is 32%, and the total reporting area for India is 6%. And then we can see that the per capita cultivated land has gone down. In 1951, it was 0.53 hectare, whereas in 2011 and 12, and it has only 0.11 hectare. So the largest net sown area in quantitative term is Rajasthan, which is about 12.96% of the total reporting areas. But in terms of proportion of net sown area to the total area, Punjab and Haryana have the highest proportion. So if we talk about the total area, like in what is the total area in terms of aerial coverage, it is Rajasthan, whereas the total proportion, what percentage of the total land the Punjab and Haryana states are showing the highest level. Then large parts of Satluj, Ganga, and Gujarat, Kathiawar Plateau, and Maharashtra have high proportion of cultivated areas because the slope is gentle, the alluvial and black soil is there, the climate is favorable, and there are excellent irrigation facilities. So in contrast to it, obviously the mountainous and dry tract will have lesser net sown area. Then the area sown, which is more than once, so that total cropped area has increased. And then we see that this area under this category comprises of land which are having rich fertile soil and regular water supply. So again, the regions of Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and the coastal regions have large percentage of area under this category. Then we have the forested area, which is about 23% of the reported area. In 1950 to 51, the area was about 14%. So then we have the land which is not available for cultivation, which consists of two types of land. One which is land which is put to non-agricultural uses, and the second one is the barren and uncultivable land. So the land which is not available for cultivation has increased from 41 million to 43 million in 2010-11. So largest amount of land in this category is Andhra Pradesh, and it is followed up by Rajasthan, Himachal, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. Then we have permanent pastures, 10.3 million hectare is devoted and about 4% of the total reporting area. Then land under miscellaneous tree crops and groves. This is all the cultivable land which is not included under the net sown area, but is there for some agricultural use. So in 1951 it was 6.97 and now it is approximately 1% in 2010 and 11. So it has must have undergone some more changes. Then the cultivable land which is the land which is available for cultivation, but not used for cultivation for one reason or the other. So maybe because of lack of water or salinity or erosion or waterlogging, this land is categorized like this. So there has been a decline in this wasteland due to some land reclamation schemes launched in India. So Gujarat 13.6%, Madhya Pradesh 10.2%, Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra are the areas. Then we have fallow land, the current fallow and the fallow which is other than the current fallow. So 5% of the reported area is the current fallow land, and Rajasthan has having the highest amount of fallow other than the current fallow, which is followed up by the Andhra Pradesh and the Maharashtra. So this is a land use map of India. So if you can see, this is the yellow part is the arable land. This is the forested land, non-agricultural, plantation, scrubs and grasses and unproductive land. So this is all from my side for this topic. Thank you.